Thank you, sir.
Take it away.
Thank you. Let me go turn this on, make sure this works. Okay, so just a quick question before I get started. How many of you now realize why Austin is considered the conversion capital of the world? Come on, seriously, right? But don't move here, please. We're getting too packed. Just this morning, right, to drive here, I live what should be about 50 minutes away, just to give you a perspective on Austin traffic. It took me almost an hour and 20 minutes to get here. Okay, and that's opposite all of South by Southwest. Just that little strip I had to pass by until I can get here. So it's nuts. Okay, and you have no idea because we're a town of less than 1 million people, and South by Southwest will bring in over 375,000 people. We just can't cope with it, but it's fun. Any of you staying for it, by the way? Just curious. Okay. Before I get started, how many of you read my last post or my last ClickSee column on conversion rate optimization is a dead end? I'm just curious. Just a handful of you. Okay, so I'm going to tell you now, it's a dead end. And let me tell you why I say that. I was at the first conversion optimization conference that Tim Ash held. And he asked me to give a couple presentations. I gave one, and then I gave the final closing keynote. And he comes up to my brother and I and says, you know, are you guys proud that, you know, we finally have this first conversion conference? Right? This is about 4 or 5 years ago. And my brother, who has a little less tact than I do sometimes, he's a little more direct, goes, no, not really. I said, we've been doing this for now, at that point, almost 15 years. And if you go back and you read some of the articles we wrote early on, we always said that conversion optimization belongs in the C-suite, right? It really is the CEO's responsibility. Okay, I'm going to talk a lot about some Amazon examples today. You've probably heard me talk about them a ton. But just to give you a perspective on this, do you know, in Amazon, this is an outside thing. In Amazon, if you want to test something on the product page, you cannot do it without Jeff Bezos' permission. Period. It's his responsibility. How many organizations have you seen that in? In over 20 years, maybe 1 or 2. And so we were really disappointed. Now, to give you some perspective, and before I jump into buyer legends, I needed everybody here to kind of get a sense of the history of conversion optimization, because if you don't have it, you don't realize why we're in a fundamentally dead end. Okay, quick poll. How many of you are CEOs of an organization that's doing greater than $25 million worth of sales? Look around, you guys. How many hands do you see up? This is why it's a dead end. Let's keep talking about growth hacking. How many CEOs do you know want to be hackers? We're shooting ourselves in the foot. The reality is, what we all want optimization to look like today is this really cool, sophisticated sports car. But what we really have is this goober's car of a Mazda Miata, and look, he's got a helmet, he's ready to go fast. But this is where we are. Why? What is going on? Why are things so messed up? My brother and I will be the first to admit it's probably our fault. Probably our fault. When we first decided to start calling this conversion optimization and start ranking for it, conversion rate was about the only search term anybody ever searched for, and it was mostly for currency conversion rate. So we started focusing on conversion rate marketing and started getting that data. It was 1998 when we first started our agency. We worked with an incubator, a guy named Jason Cement. This is one of the first bigger case studies we had. Magmall used to sell magazine subscriptions. Some of you, if you were around back then in the .bomb days, they were competing against a company called E-News. They were extremely well-funded, you know, $10+ million, I don't even know, maybe more, maybe closer to 100 million. It was a ridiculous amount of money. We worked with Jason, made a whole bunch of tweaks. He finally went to a redesign, but he went from like a 1.11% conversion rate to like a 4.93 conversion rate, okay? Today, Jason's still in business. Still doing this, and when you look at the redesign, you'll see exactly why. You'll notice the focus is on B2B sales. And so like Google is one of his largest B2B customers. He services all the magazine subscriptions for all the people. So that's what he did. The competitor, E-News, went out of business. Why? Because they obviously never cared about conversion optimization. Back then, it was so easy to optimize things. You know what we focused on? Getting the top 10 list of products. You can see it there. Why you should buy from you, right? Making the navigation easy to find, the magazines people are interested in. I mean, it just wasn't hard. Making the site look a little bit less god-awful, okay? It just wasn't very difficult. As we kept progressing, and I'm going 20 years real fast, guys. This is a story we worked with Overstock. How many of you have seen this example before? Right? If you've read a couple of my books, you probably know this example. We worked with Overstock. This was their #1 most trafficked page other than their home page. They had a 90+% abandonment from this page. We looked at the page and said, okay, there's a big problem. Here's the content of the page. And what was happening at that time, they had a multivariate testing tool. They had a staff of 13 with statisticians and marketers, and they were going about and they were trying to test this and improve it. And they take all the different areas of the page and move it around and hope to get a better result. Wouldn't budge the needle. My brother was on the phone on IM with Patrick Byrne at like 2 o'clock in the morning. 5 o'clock in the morning, again, there was no business. This was really early on. I go ahead and I look at the page. I'm like, dude, this is obvious what's wrong. And what I told myself is a little story. And this is where Buyer Legends got to. We were telling ourselves a story of different types of buyers that would come to this page and realize that what was wrong with this page is it wasn't satisfying what we called the competitive personality type. We weren't addressing, when you look at the top graphic, it said search for kids' titles for fun and learning next to the search box and saying, hey, that's not going to appeal to these competitives. Let's just change that one graphic. That one graphic was worth over $25 million to Overstock that year. Okay? One change, literally overnight. By the time they woke up, they had it implemented, and 5% top-line lift dropped the abandonment rate to like 60%. Okay. And Patrick was obviously concerned about conversion rate. That's a CEO who cared. He's crazy in every other aspect, but he cared. Now, mind you, he got that done, but he could not get the rest of his team to get the buy-off to work with them on fixing everything else, even as the CEO. That's the problem. Because when you think about what happens in most organizations, who's making all the decisions about the website? About all the other silos in the organization, the sales, the customer support, right? It's all broken apart. The experience is fundamentally broken, right? I've shown this example as a classic example of marketing being broken, right? Great banner, great landing page, obviously great scent, they're connected, right? Great copy, Geico makes it easy, just fill in your zip code. You put in your zip code, you get to this page, duh, right? Broken. We know that. Okay, simple broken case of scent. How much did this cost them? How many years did they go without fixing this? Years. And why? Because marketing owned the banner and the landing page, and who owned this? What we like to call the BPUs. Everyone know what a BPU is, right? Business Prevention Unit. Some of you call it IT, but we like to call it BPUs. But it's like I mentioned, we're stuck in a bottle. Most organizations are stuck in a bottle. And you can't read the label when you're stuck inside the bottle. Because think about it. What business are you in? Conversion rate optimization. How many hours a day do your customers think about conversion optimization?
30 seconds.
30 seconds. How many hours a day do you think about conversion optimization?
27.
That's the problem. That's the problem. And it happens in every single business, right? And so what we did for many years is our first book, our first ebook was The Marketer's Common Sense Guide to E-Metrics, written in 2001. Then we wrote a book on persuasive online copywriting. How many people have a copy of that? Oh, see, that's how I know the old timers in the room, by the way. Okay, out of print. We printed like 4 times and totally out of print. I've seen copies sell for over $1,100 on Amazon, which is crazy. Can't see why, but I only got like 10 copies left, by the way. But we studied everything: paid search, usability, analytics, search marketing, design, layout, right? And what we tried to do is get everyone to be experts at every single one of the many, many, many disciplines that you needed for conversion rate optimization, right? How many of you have ever seen one of my lists on, the required reading for conversion optimization, right? Books, like a wide variety of books that you have to have. It's a crazy discipline when you think about it. We're all nuts. You realize that, okay? You've got to be a master of all these different disciplines to really be good at this. And the unfortunate part is because of our very nature, you're always going to have one preference for another one or the other one. So like, for example, Alex, who's been a dear friend for going on over 10 years now, right? Obviously, his approach is always going to be a design-centered approach first, right? That's the hammer in him, right? That's what he sees the world as a nail. Now, it doesn't mean he doesn't understand the value of SEO, he doesn't understand the value of PPC, doesn't understand the value of copy, but his natural inkling is going to be that, okay? So we got people stuck on this focus. But we've been saying this for years, and you know what? My brother and I are probably the smartest dumb people you ever meet in your life, okay? Because it takes us a lot of years to really get things clear. But we said, businesses are systems. They're organisms. They're crazy with all kinds of different things. And if you think about one of the most successful, money-making, converting businesses ever of all time is Disney, right? They do everything to give you that incredible experience to suck money right out of your pockets at every moment, from how they take care of garbage, to how you walk in, to what you see, to the perspective, and just everything, right? And we know that. And businesses are these complex systems, and conversions break because of the systems. Because people, as they want to navigate your system, they find the holes, like we did with, with Geico, right? BPU got in the way. Customer service got in the way. With our last client, there was false expectations of what to expect with their product and pricing around their product, that once we changed those expectations because we couldn't do anything to the product, gave them a 10-figure lift. It's not that complicated when you understand that people are on their own journey. It was one of my first columns ever. I said, conversion rate is a measure of your ability to persuade visitors to take the action you want them to take. But it's a reflection of your effectiveness and customer satisfaction. For you to achieve your goals, your visitors must achieve their goals first. Now, today in a world with social media, everyone kind of sort of gets that. But in 2001, people were still worried about eyeballs. The sock puppet was still popular. I want you to keep this in mind. Part of what really awakened us in this last 2 years, how many people here read Jeff Bezos, the story of him in the Everything Store? If you haven't read the book, don't worry about it. I'm going to summarize it to you in two quotes. But the first one is this one. They asked him about reviews and how he was going to allow reviews on the site. And he said to all the publishers, the most important thing, he says, we're not in the business of selling books, we're in the business of helping customers buy books. Think about that subtle distinction, right? All he's saying is, we're in the business of facilitating them buying. We'll worry about the selling. And when you hear Jeff Bezos talk, and I'll talk about it a little bit later, he thinks in the world of inputs and outputs. The selling is an output. Helping people buy are the inputs. If you work on that, you solve the bigger problem. Okay. Which businesses are you involved with? Are you in the business of helping people buy from you, or are you in the business of selling them? Conversion optimization. You don't have to answer. I'm not going to put you on the spot. I like you too much. Okay. So we went ahead and we started realizing, and this was in 2005. We had just finished publishing Call to Action, which was the first New York Times best-selling book on conversion rate optimization. It was Wall Street Journal, USA Today, all that. Some of you may have remembered it has an ugly Egyptian eagle on the cover, which Seth Godin actually wrote in his blog, and he's the reason we became a bestseller. He said, drop everything you're doing, and he called it, don't judge a book by its cover. Even though it's a god-awful cover, drop everything you're doing and go buy it. And people did, which we didn't ever think it could be a best-selling book, so it just surprised us. But we realized then that conversion optimization was a dead end, because we were just applying Band-Aids to the broken system, right? You can't fix the system unless you fix the plumbing and unless you fix the electricity underneath, right? It's broken. It's broken. And so we developed something called Persuasion Architecture. Alex, how many of those were you involved with? 2 out of 3. Just curious. And we had incredible lifts with Persuasion Architecture. There was just one problem. One, it required major buy-in from the organization because we were really challenging every assumption. We were going to do everything. It took somewhere between 6 months to a year to execute on a project. How many of you know organizations that have the patience for 6 months to a year to change everything Didn't happen. And even though it had success, the fundamental goal of Persuasion Architecture was to realize that there was this Johari window, named after Joe and Harry, Ingram and Luft, and that organizations had information that they knew that would enable people to buy if they would just tell people about it, okay? But we made assumptions about what they do or do not know, and we kept it hidden from them. And if all we did is slide the window panes so that the hidden was now open, more people would buy. And so our sites became way more copy heavy, way more linking through it. And it did. It helped people buy a lot. There were 6 steps to Persuasion Architecture. And this is why it took so long. The first thing we had to do was help people uncover their personas, right? And that project, you'd be amazed, like Universal Orlando, they had literally a wall that went from the end of that door to here, full of research. But when we asked them to try to describe their personas, they couldn't do anything. We literally had to do first-party research. We had people come into the parks with these dials and ask them questions. And I mean, we were able to construct personas that, like, one of the things we learned is never talk to somebody who's analytical about Dr. Seuss. You will piss them off. By the way, that's both a technical term, both here in Texas and in Brooklyn. I learned. It's 3 years I'm here now. So we did our personas. The next thing we would do is we literally plan click to click to click, all the way from how they become aware of us to the conversion point for every single persona, for every single permutation, and we had our own software to do this, create all kinds of permutation. Once we had those persuasive scenarios planned, then we did the creative stuff. We got the copy written. Then we designed it in grayscale. Then we designed in color after that. And you can understand why this took months and months and months and months to do. Then we'd go ahead and we'd start doing some testing, user testing, quality testing up first, and then obviously some A/B testing. We'd get it implemented. Then we'd measure the scenarios to see how closely they match with our expectations, right? Because if you expect people to go through the park this way and they're going that way, you've got a problem. You've got to move things. So we were able to do that. Huge lifts, but it took forever. But out of Persuasion Architecture, it was built on 3 fundamental questions. Who are we trying to persuade? That's the personas, customer trying to achieve their goals. What action do we want them ultimately to take, right? From a click-to-click basis and the ultimate action, right? The final conversion point. And then what action do they want to take? What's their motivation for doing this? We had to answer that. And so we do that for every single click throughout that whole scenario. And you can imagine thousands of clicks. This took forever. It was painful, okay? The process is great, can't scale. And so that's where we are today. And we knew there was a serious problem because study after study shows that most organizations just are not customer-centric. They don't get it. Customer experience is not at their core. In fact, when Bain did a study and they asked people, how many of your executives believe that you're customer-centric? 80% of executives will tell you their organizations are customer-centric. But when they ask those same customers of those organizations, how many of them are customer-centric? What percent do you think answered that those organizations are customer-centric? 8. That's a huge delivery gap. That's what we need to overcome. Second most important quote from the Everything Store. Now you're done. You don't have to worry about anything else. 1994, Jeff Bezos said, "The single most important thing is to focus obsessively on the customer. Our goal is to be Earth's most customer-centric company." I want to break that line down. Customer-centric. How many of you have heard interviews with Jeff Bezos? Okay. How many of you, anybody here met him? Just curious? Okay. If you meet him and talk to people who work for him, there's no easy way to put it. He's an asshole. Okay? He's not a warm, fuzzy guy. So what's this customer-centric mean? Is it because I love you and I want to take care of you? No. He could give a what about you, okay? What it means was that we can have more data to understand what you want versus what he wants versus what she wants based on every click, mouse movement, share, email, wish list, social graph. You get it? Unlike the most data-centric company beforehand, Walmart, that knew to a penny what products moved on a shelf, they didn't know anything about you. But online, I tie it to an email, to a phone number, to an individual. That's what made them killer. That's why 30% of every e-commerce dollar in the United States goes through their platform. Because he made it simple. And he focused in on the customer, solving their problems, making it easy for them to buy. And all the research shows that customer experience, the people who invest in it, outperform the S&P, outperform everybody else. So why are we stuck on growth hacking, on conversion optimization? That's not what this is about. And if we're stuck there, we're in the wrong place. And I'm hoping today to move you out of there. We need, as a group, to start changing this focus. Amazon has 4 pillars that have made them successful. The funny thing about this, I was telling these guys beforehand, that I wrote about this on my blog. And Amazon, when they're hiring prospective employees, sends them an email with a link to this article. I was like, that's cool. I said, why couldn't they publish it online so I can actually get the link juice? Anyway, 4 key things. They're customer-centric, we know that. Continuous optimization. It's not about marketing optimization. They optimize everything. Supply chain, finance, right? Everything to continuously improve things. It's critical to all parts of their business. So for example, when they bought the robots and invested in improving the Kiva robots to distribute their things, is that an effort to improve conversion optimization? Absolutely. That's continuous optimization. If I can get the product to you faster with less errors, what are you going to do next time? Buy from them again, and it's a vicious cycle. How many of you are Prime customers? How many of you get packages more than once a week? That's why they're killing it, and everyone else has missed it. They have a culture of innovation. Okay? This is what testing is about. Testing is about research and development. It's about understanding things. They spent $10 billion in R&D last year, with a B. $10 billion. Just to put it in perspective, Barnes & Noble's only made $7-point-something billion in sales. Oops. Are they profitable? Yes, they are in a lot of business units. But they invest everything else into this R&D because they know it's about the long term. Relationships, conversion optimization, customer experience is not about what the transaction is today. It's about where it's going over the next decade. Inputs and outputs. And then they're very agile. They can react to things and make changes, and they have all the platforms to do that in a moment's notice. This is what we need to teach organizations to do. Now, let me explain to you what I keep talking about this inputs and outputs. At Amazon, product managers do not measure conversion rates. They have all that data. That's not the way they operate. They operate on these inputs. They know that from a customer's perspective, and by the way, this also aligns with their brand story, that if they give customers a greater selection, they're more likely to buy. If we give them lower prices, anyone hate lower prices? No. If we make the products available so that you can get it right away, right? They're doing everything to get it to you now in 2 hours, 1 hour in New York City. I mean, anybody want their products slower? And they have a higher level of customer experience than almost every other organization out there for years and years and years and years. These are their inputs. He never worries about stock price because he can't control that. But if he controls the parts that matter to the customer, everything else takes care of itself. How many of you have heard my friend Avinash talk about faith-based initiatives? That's what this is. Believe that if you take care of your customer in the long term, they'll continue to buy from you over the long term. Does that make sense? Focus there, guys. I rarely quote my friend Seth. But he had this blog post on June 21st, and I suggest you go through it. But the key thing he says here is if the process we've used in the past is broken, let's fix it. Because, in fact, getting that process right is actually more urgent than the problem we've got today. And so what Buyer Legends is a fix of the process that we've developed over all these years. I'm sure lots of you have either seen courses, read articles that I've done, looked at my books, or by other people that I've trained over the years, you've done it. Our process was broken. And we were very fortunate. Our last major client asked us to go away for a quarter, do a couple little things. But he said, take your process and do the 80-20 rule on it, Pareto principle. Simplify it, make it agile, because persuasion architecture is the right thing, but we can't execute on it. And so Paul, who finally left Google, is now at Airbnb, told us, go do this. and we came up with buyer legends. And why? What we realized that in the 20 years that we were so successful, okay, and I know Alex does this intuitively as well, is the companies that got it, that transformed, what they were doing is they learned to tell the stories from their customer's point of view. The actual details didn't matter. The tactics don't matter. If the organization can't get into that mind of making the customer the hero and understanding how they want to go on that journey. And so, as analysts, as conversion optimizers, we want to give people reports and deep analytics and all that. And analytics are great to inform us, but they don't move an organization. In fact, there's great research that actually shows, fMRI research, that the parts of the brain that light up when you're looking at analytics shut off the part that gives you empathy towards your customer. You can't be customer-centric and analytical at the same time. Now, Amazon's the most analytical company you'll ever reach, right? They're very customer-centric. Here's the secret. If they want to release a new product, they write a story, a narrative, a press release about the product before anything ever gets done. If you want to have a meeting with Jeff Bezos, you can't bring in a PowerPoint. You can't bring in a stack of reports. You've got to write a 5 to 6 page narrative about what you want to accomplish from the perspective of your customer, because this is what matters. Since we heard the words once upon a time, humans have been programmed, our brains are programmed to tell stories. And that's what we need to become. Why do you think everybody's talking about storytelling today? Because marketing's finally getting clear. We can use storytelling, but in the right way. It's not the story that we tell about our brand and beat our chest and say, we're the best. No. The stories we want to tell, and the reason we chose the word legends is twofold. Obviously, we want legends of stories. We want stories. And what's the difference between a legend and a story? A legend is, I told it to you, and then you told it to him, and he told it to somebody else. Like, I've told easily 10,000 people this one story about Amazon. I went ahead, I ordered a new backup drive for this one. I ordered it by accident with the wrong plug. I had to send it back. So, of course, they give me the credit and give me the slip to put it back on to ship it back. It sits in my house for 3 weeks. I'm lazy, I don't ship it out. I finally get one day, I say, okay, I'm gonna go to the UPS store, drop it off. I take the label, I put it on the box, I bring it to the UPS store. That afternoon, I had the credit on my credit card. They didn't wait till they got it, they just gave me credit. How many times have I told that story and other people told that story? How many of you have had people's stories like that with Amazon before? We've all had them. How many of you have had that kind of story with an Apple store before? Right? That's a legend. And the second part to the legend, why it works, is because we're tying it to a map, something that's measurable and tangible. If you don't do the storytelling with the tangible, you don't get there. You can't be successful. It just becomes the fiction that most people tell themselves. So our job is to help them understand who their customer is, let them tell the story as their customer, as the hero of their journey, accomplishing their task. That's when you've done something amazing. That's when you can start being great at telling stories and giving to them in real paragraphs. Stop sending reports with a few numbers. Put it into context of stories. Tie it in with pictures of their screenshots. Tell the story of a visitor going through it, why it's broken. And it's, like I said, it's not just these plain stories. It's not about promotion that most marketers think about. This is about the experience. This is about letting customers experience it from, the organization experience it from their customer's viewpoint. It's critical to do this. Now, while I'm saying all this, it sounds simple, but it's not easy. It's not an easy thing to do, okay? We still struggle with this 20 years later, okay? But we're getting there. So how do buyer legends work? The first time you do a buyer legend, and you can read the book, it's 46 pages on Kindle, okay? 46 pages, it'll take you half an hour to read the book. I'm gonna give you the basic recipe for doing it now anyway. The first time you do it, it'll take you about 90 minutes. Some of you probably faster because you've already probably done perspectives or personas before, so it'll be a little bit easier. But your first one will take 90 minutes. By the time you start doing these, you can knock off legends 10, 15 minutes. And that's why it becomes an agile process. So we start with the perspective of the customer. What are they trying to achieve? Whether it's from a campaign level, whether it's from the macro conversion level, from the whole experience level, I don't really care. The second part, Alex says, probably the most difficult part for clients to do, but it's the most valuable thing you'll ever do, is what we call the Premortem. Tell me everything that could go wrong in getting somebody to complete the purchase. Everything. From their dog vomiting on them, sorry for the visual, okay, to their credit card not having enough credit on it, whatever it is. Come up with every possible excuse why they could not complete the transaction. And they're going to struggle. And the first thing I'm going to suggest to you is come up with 3 or 4 examples like that, and all of a sudden, they'll be vomiting tons of examples of this. They'll get it. That's the critical part. It'll take about 10 minutes to come up with 20, 25, and you can keep adding more later on. Then you want to do a reverse chronology. And what that means, and by the way, this is the way you should be doing a lot of your analytics as well. Start from the end. What made people successful, and then work backwards. Because what happens is when we tell a story going forwards, we make assumptions about what got them from frame A to frame B. We don't complete it. But when you have to explain it from, well, they're at B, how did they get there from A? You've got to complete the thought. So this is critical to do this reverse chronology. And then you draft your legend. You create a story. Some of you are going to be better at drafting stories. Some of you are going to be worse, and you're just going to get better with practice, right? If you study things about developing drama and all that, you'll get there. And that's it. It's that simple. It's a simple process, okay? So we start with the perspectives. Perspectives are a simple way of saying, you know what, we haven't done personas all the way. We don't have to do everything complete. We've got something to work from. It could be the 4 basic personality types. It could be new visitors versus people who know our brand versus who don't know I don't care. Start somewhere. Just a different perspective that's customer focused. Good personas are composites where you've added motivation and knowledge and needs and purchase preferences. But what perspectives are is take a self-selection, something not that you decide is important about describing the customer, but how they would self-select themselves to buy. How are they viewing the world differently? That's what matters. Start from that perspective, and you can use all these different tools that we've written about and shared about for years. Once you have that, okay, and you've selected your perspective, and you've got your Premortem, you've got the outline of the story backwards, you drafted your buyer legend, let them execute on it. And like Persuasion Architecture, you're going to see results that are so much higher than you've ever imagined because you solved the system problem. What Buyer Legends allows you to do is take this story, and whether you're an engineer or an analyst or the marketer, everyone's brain can relate to the story. We don't get stuck on the analytics. Everyone's super clear about what the execution looks like. There's no detail left unsaid, right? When we talk about making sure they see the button, well, what do you mean by that? Be specific. That's what a great story does. And that's why you can get everybody on the exact same page. Now, we talk about doing it mostly in writing, but yes, you know what? If you've got some graphical skills, some cartooning skills, like my friend Brian Massey, right? Go ahead, draw some storyboards and graphics. Make it easier for them to visualize it. That's great. Doesn't matter. It'll take you a little bit longer, but it will help, right? Storyboard the whole thing. And then the key step to make sure it's not fiction is to tie it to the analytics, okay? You've got to make sure that you know how to measure that segment. That's the hero. What's the catalyst, which may or may not be measurable? What brought them to something that you can actually measure in that first step? Right? If I told you to go visit usertesting.com and you just typed usertesting.com, I don't know what the catalyst was. It may have been me here at stage, right? Or if you go now and buy Buyer Legends, I don't know, but they sold the book. What's the first measurable step? Well, I may be able to notice the sales rank changed. So, okay, so that's a first step for me. Does everyone get that? I don't care what it is, find something that you can tie it to an analytic point. What are the road signs? What are the ways along the way that you know whether they've engaged or not? So in the case of Buyer Legends, after you read the book, at the end of the book, we tell you if you want to actually see the buyer legend we used to get people to buy the book, you can come to our website, buyerlegends.com. We have a separate blog there. There's more details in there as well. And in the resource section, you can download a copy of the legend of Brad that we used to write the book. Okay? That's a road sign for us. What are the detours? Oh, you may get distracted on a blog post. That's okay, but we can recognize that. What's the next measurable step that you're starting to get into the conversion funnel? What are all the forks in the road that you may encounter? And then ultimately, how do I measure that destination? What do I want you to accomplish? Simple. That's how you get measurement right. Now, what I've done, hopefully in the last 37 minutes, is given you guys the ingredients to go out there and accomplish something truly amazing with this industry. And just as if I gave you, flour, salt, and water, if I gave it to my soon-to-be 6-year-old, he'd come out with glue, okay? But in some of your hands, because I've been watching some of the notes coming out of here, I've been hearing some of the conversations, I know a lot of you in this room, some of you are going to create amazing, amazing pastries, amazing French bread out of the same exact ingredients. CRO is not hard. We talked about it earlier. What is the fundamental CRO? You want to read it to them? Or should I tell him? I should tell him? He's going to be shy now. Create massive value, massive perspective of value for your customer at very little cost to them. That's it. It's that simple. If I can see more value than what I'm going to spend, I'm going to buy. That's all. The more value you create, the easier you're going to make it. How many of you have bought from a site that sucked before? We all have. Why? Because it offered something of more value. It mattered to us. That's the bottom level of it, bottom line of this. So here are all the ingredients that make a great buyer legend. You've got your personas or perspectives. You understand their purpose and objective. What are they trying to achieve? It's not that they're trying to buy conversion rate optimization. They're never buying conversion rate optimization. What are they buying? Come on, we've got a room full of you. What are they buying when they buy CRO? Profits, more sales. It's all they care about. Stop talking about tactics. Stop. It's not important. You can have a background for those who are analytical and want to know how the process is, but that's not what they care about. Their rationale. Why are they making decisions? What's going to justify it for them? Because we all purchase emotionally, but we have to justify it logically. What's the rationale? What are all the elements to make their decisions? What are all the key decisions they're going to make? Who are all the key decision makers that are going to make it alongside with them? Develop your premortem. Everything that can go wrong will, Murphy's Law. Okay? The drama. What are the emotional struggles that get them through purchasing or not purchasing? Develop that reverse chronology, map it out, how it's all going to go perfect from step to step. One of the greatest videos you'll ever watch if you want to be a great analyst, great storyteller. The guys who developed The Simpsons, Trey Parker and blanking out his other name. South Park, sorry, yeah, South Park. There's a short video, if you email me or tweet me, I will send it out, that talks about, very simply, why you can't do, this happened, and then that happened, and then that happened. That's a boring story, and they talk about how to make it not boring, okay? I'll happily send that out. What are all the constraints and considerations that go along the way? What are all their reasonable alternatives, including your competitors or not buying? How many people go ahead and they may ping Craig for some advice, they may ping Alex for some advice, and not hire either one of them? Because it's just easier not to change the status quo in the organization. You've seen that before, right? It happens all the time. And then tie it into your measurements. I want to end on one last note. April 9th, this coming April 9th, I'll be 45 years old. I will have spent half my life in conversion optimization. It also happens to be the day that, I don't know who, but they decided it was going to be International Conversion Rate Optimization Day. It's kind of cool. I'm honored. I don't know if anybody knew it. I won't tell them afterwards. So I'm going to ask one request. If you've ever learned anything from any of our books, from any of our blogs, from ever seeing a webinar, from a conference, or from anyone we ever trained for in this industry, do me a favor, one of two things. Either A, pick a nonprofit and give them a couple of hours and help them accomplish something in the name of this. Or two, make a small donation, make it in my name, I don't care, but do something good out of this. That's why we came here. When our friend Roy Williams, who's here in town, is what originally brought us to Austin, he said there are three things you can do. He said you can make a name for yourself, you can make money, or you can make a difference. And we had to choose which ones we were going to accomplish first. And we thought about it. We said, you know what? We wanted to make a difference. We believed we were going to make a difference. And in 20 years, we know we've had a difference in a bunch of people's lives. Not the way we've wanted to. But look at where we are today. Look how many people there are today. If we all apply what we've learned over the last few days, think about the difference we can start really making to this. So I'm going to ask you, please, April 9th, get involved, help out, and thank you very much.